I wanted to talk about what happened in France yesterday. Whoa, hang on just a... Excuse me. This is what happens when you get Huffington Post on your computer. All of a sudden, it's so Huffington Post just went away. This horrible incident. A fellow whose first name is Mohammed. It's going to, of course, this is going to inflame the Reich here in the United States. And Newt Gingrich now going on television saying that we should frankly test every person here who is of Muslim background, and if they believe in Sharia, they should be deported. Sharia is incompatible with Western civilization. I wonder if he thinks that we should do the same thing with people who keep kosher. I mean, you know, Sharia means a lot of things and a lot of different things in a lot of different places. You know, in Saudi Arabia, in some parts of the very, very conservative Middle East, it means a form of governance and religion that most of us would find, at the very least, medieval. But on the other hand, you know, there are so-called Sharia courts in the United States that are just like the Catholic Church has, where, you know, a couple can go for you know, negotiating the terms of a divorce, or, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, this is just a, you know, it's a piece of Islam. It all depends on how it's played out. But the thing that you know, so obviously, you know, Gingrich either doesn't know that, and I don't believe that, or, you know, they're thinking, hey, we can use Islamophobia as a political tool, the Republicans, which puts, frankly, the Clinton campaign in a very difficult position, because if Hillary Clinton and campaign come out in favor of a strong, muscular military response against this, they will be accused of being warmongers and whatnot, and if they don't, they'll be accused of being soft on terrorism. And which is exactly, in either case, you know, the warmonger part will come from the left, the terrorism part will come from the right. But whatever it is, this is exactly what the Islamic State, what Daesh wants. In fact, it's what they have said they want. They laid it right out. And just like George W. Bush played right into Osama bin Laden's hands, the Republicans right now are playing right. They are doing the work of ISIL. And I think this is, there's a great piece over at The Intercept by Murtaza Hussain. And it's titled Islamic State's Goal, Eliminating the Gray Zone of Coexistence Between Muslims and the West. Now, you'll recall back in 1998, Osama bin Laden talked about how upset he was that we were buying oil cheaply from Saudi Arabia, and more importantly, that we still had an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia left over from George Herbert Walker Bush's Gulf War against Iraq. And on that Air Force base, on the sacred soil of Saudi Arabia, in Osama bin Laden's mind, you had men who were looking at pornography, U.S. soldiers, and women who were driving cars and running around with their elbows showing, U.S. soldiers, and the families and spouses of male U.S. soldiers. And, you know, and basically he said, this is intolerable. And he pointed out that in fact, in 2004, he did it in a video. He said, you know, we can put the flag of Al-Qaeda, the most remote spot, and George W. Bush and his friends will spend billions of American dollars, you know, in a futile attempt to go after us, sort of thing. In other words, we're baiting you, George. And that was what 9/11 was all about. Was Osama bin Laden was a relative unknown. He had, at the most, 20,000 people who had been through his training camp, and at the most, 5,000 people in Afghanistan who were actually his followers. That was it. He was considered a crackpot in the Islamic world, in the Muslim world. Osama bin Laden was considered a crackpot. His own country, Saudi Arabia, had deported him, stripped him of his citizenship, because he was just too wacky for Saudi Arabia, which is too wacky for me, right? I mean, you know, the Saudis, well, in any case. So bin Laden, what he was praying would happen after 9/11 was that we would declare war on Islam, that George W. Bush would be stupid enough to go to war with a Muslim country rather than calling together all the international police forces of the world and simply arresting bin Laden. Keep in mind, the Taliban, Mullah Omar, who ran the Taliban in September of 2001, right after 9/11, Mullah Omar offered to arrest bin Laden and hand him over to a third-party government, you know, not the United States, but a third-party government where he could get a fair trial if we, you know, just present some evidence that he's responsible for this and we will arrest him. And George W. Bush said, no, thanks, we'd rather bomb your country. In other words, George W. Bush said, we want to do exactly what Osama bin Laden wanted us to do. And then he went and bombed Iraq, too, which had nothing to do with 9/11, which, you know, kind of doubled down on, you know, Osama bin Laden really got what he wanted. So now in the modern era, and it's not Osama bin Laden anymore, it's Daesh or ISIL, and they publish a magazine called Dabiq. And in the February issue of their magazine, they said Muslims in the West will soon find themselves between one of two choices. This was like 2 weeks after the Charlie Hebdo murders in France. They said the attack, they're talking about the Charlie Hebdo attack, has further brought division to the world, the group said, boasting, I'm reading from Martha Hussein's piece over at The Intercept. The group said, boasting that it had polarized society and, quote, eliminated the gray zone, end quote, representing coexistence between religious groups. As a result, it said, Muslims living in the West would soon no longer be welcome in their own societies, treated with increasing suspicion, distrust, and hostility by their fellow citizens as a result of the deadly shooting, the Hebdo. Western Muslims would soon be forced to eat, now this is quoting from this copy of Dabiq, the ISIL magazine, either apostatize, in other words, either commit blasphemy, that is to say, still, you know, fit in with your local community that is not Muslim, but participate. You could be Muslim, but, you know, not wearing a hijab or, you know, whatever. Either apostatize or they migrate to the Islamic State and thereby escape persecution from the Crusader governments and citizens. So what the explicit goal, the state, this is not a secret. This doesn't require a CIA analyst. All you have to do is read their own literature. The explicit goal of ISIL is to cause people who are not Muslims in the United States and Western Europe, and around the world, frankly, to cause people who, like you and me, who are not, you may be Muslim, I'm sure there are many Muslims watching the program or listening to the program right now, but to cause non-Muslims to view Muslims with fear and distrust. And that would then radicalize the Muslims and cause them to say, okay, I'm being treated crappy in this society, people don't like me, people are giving me a hard time, I'm being discriminated against, I'm going to leave here, go to Syria, and become part of the Muslim paradise. Now, it's not quite working out that way, but I'm telling you, Newt Gingrich and Donald Trump and Fox so-called news and right-wing hate radio and the whole crowd of them are doing ISIL's work. And they're doing it enthusiastically because they think it's going to gain them political power, which it does, actually. George W. Bush went to war against two Muslim countries. His popularity went up. Now, you know, it took us 10 years to see how stupid it was, although a lot of us saw it from day one. But this has to stop. We've got to stop doing their work for them.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And the media has to start calling people like Newt Gingrich out and Donald Trump saying, you know, you're doing ISIL's work. Why are you doing their work for them?
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.